lovelies. Today I'm going to be giving you guys a video on if I am a strict parent or not quiz. And I saw this actually on TikTok, so I thought this would be a very fun trend. And I'm going to be putting my own spin on it. So I hope you guys enjoy. This is definitely going to get juicy and very fun. So let me guys know in the comments down below if you liked this trend, would like to see more. And also, if you think if I am a strict parent or not. So let's get started. And also when it comes to my demographic growing up, I definitely had a mix of one parent that was a little more strict and one that was definitely more lenient. So my mom was definitely on the stricter side and my dad was kind of a little less strict. So they were a good balance for each other. But I thought this would be a really cool trend to see where I stand on the spectrum, and this could definitely change over the years too. So yeah, this will be a fun trend. So the first question today is, what would you do if one of your kids was failing a class? All right, so let's get started. So firstly, I want to be one of those parents that my kid can go to for just about anything. And I don't want to be a parent that someone is hiding something from or feel like they can't come to me. So I feel like I would handle it and be like, hey, do you need any help? Do you need a tutor? I could definitely take a look and see if there's anything I can do. And also ask if this is something they need to change. Like, could they change their course? Could they potentially change their major or drop this class if necessary? Or if they're allowed to? I would just try my best to help this person, and understanding too that sometimes classes are not going to come as easy to one person as it is another. So I'm trying my best to understand that sometimes people are going to fail or not be good at certain things as well, and certain classes, so I would try my best to be very understanding and help them through it. But yeah, also failing is not something that should be frowned upon. However, I do think it's good to address it and make sure that you can help them improve. Alright, and next on the list is, what would you do if your kid wanted to drop out of school? So I definitely feel like this is a very loaded question because it definitely depends on how old they are, because I think every state in the United States is different, where I think you have to be like 16 in my state to even get a parental consent to drop out. But if you're talking about further than like K through 12 in our system, then I would be totally on board for it. But I do think it's a very good conversation to have with your child and say, hey, just letting you know that I'm totally game for whatever you want to do, but I just want to know what your plan is. Like, what are you planning on doing with your life now without that? And, you know, this is also a major change of your life, and it could be a very pivotal moment, and it also could be a very negative thing. So I think it's good to have that conversation with your kid, but also not hinder them from what they want to do. And also, too, when it comes to, like, the K through 12, like, if they're, like, under my care still, like, if they're a minor, I do think that sometimes it can be appropriate to drop, like, if they're very successful, like, as a kid, because sometimes they're really successful as, like, actors or models or, like, YouTubers. Like, even Emma Chamberlain, I don't know if you guys know this, but she's a good example, where she dropped out of school before she was actually graduated, like, high school. I don't remember what age. I think it was, like, 16. Can't remember. But anyway, Emma's a good example, where she's very successful, and she was making, like, $10,000 a month on YouTube at that time. And her parents were artists, so they were totally fine with signing her out of school, and she was already working like a full-time job at that point. So then I would be like, oh yeah, that's totally fine. Like, if you have a plan and it's working out for you, that's totally fine for you to do that, and I would be right behind you. But if they were just doing it because maybe they weren't doing well in classes or they just didn't like it, and they were underage only, so that would be different. I'd try my best to try to hinder them from doing that if at all necessary, but I would want my kid to feel like I supported them in whatever it is they did. And even if they dropped out of college, I'd have no problem with that, because I want to make sure that I'm their number one supporter. And yeah, I just want to make sure they're making the best decisions for themselves, and I don't really care about myself in the situation. But I do think sometimes it is really important to tell them, like, hey, you know, this is what could happen if you do this. Yeah, it's a very adult conversation to have there. So next question on the list is, what would you do if you found out that your kid was at a party that you had no idea about? Okay, so I definitely get a little upset, but I wouldn't be mad at them personally. I would just be more upset about the situation in general. But I want to make sure that I would address it head on with my kid there, because I just want to make sure that they're safe at all times. And I think that's just a big thing. And I just want to make sure that they're being honest with me about where they are. And not that I care where they are. I could care less if they're at a party. I just want to make sure that they're safe. And also, too, I would want to know, like, if they're in trouble, like, where I should be going and, like, putting in a police report if necessary if something really bad happens. So I think it's just a very good parent thing to make sure that you know where they are if you can. So not that I want to be like a helicopter parent or anything, but I definitely would just like to know if they're at a party. And I think that's definitely a conversation to have. And if they kept doing that, then it would be another conversation. Then I would actually put some force down there and actually tell them, hey, you know, if you keep doing this, then I'm going to put some restrictions on you. So next question is, what would you do if you found out that your kid brought over their crush and snuck them over secretly, so you didn't know? Okay, so I actually would not really care about this at all. I would think this is kind of more cute than anything else. Even though I'd like to know, I think it's just more adorable than anything else. But I think it would depend, though, like how old they are, because if it's like really young, then maybe I should get involved and try to intervene and get them separated in that situation. But if they're old enough where I can trust them and be responsible, then I wouldn't really have a problem with that at all. It's just more cute than anything else. So I would not have a problem with this one at all, surprisingly. But yeah, I think it's definitely a good conversation to have, though, and be like, you know, if they need a ride home, let me know. Or I think it's also a good conversation to have, like, with your parents or kid in general, saying, like, if you're dating someone or talking to someone or seeing someone or hanging out with them. But yeah, it's definitely a good conversation to have. And I also think it's a good conversation for us as future parents to have with your kids, saying, hey, like, I just want to make sure that you know what a relationship is, how to go by it, and also to making sure that, like, they're not too young getting in relationships, and also making sure that they're staying safe. So I would actually think this is kind of cute. And I saved the most controversial question for last. So, what would you do if you found out that your kid was arrested? So, this is a loaded question, and I want to get through it. So, I think there's many instances where I would definitely try to make sure that I'm helping them heal and get the help that they need. But I think it depends on the situation and what's completely going on. So, I'd want to have a conversation with them, too. And I also think it depends on what the actual issue is, why they got arrested, and also were they a minor, were they adult, because I think it definitely matters there too. And also I need to really have a good conversation with them, obviously, if they got arrested in this situation. But there's a million reasons why you can get arrested, honestly, so I think it really depends. And also too, I do think sometimes that when it comes to kids, sometimes you have to make a really bad decision or a small decision that is bad, and then you'll get put into prison to actually get better. Sometimes it happens a lot with, like, addiction, too. So I actually think that it's good to make sure you're still trying to support them. Unless if it's, like, something very evil and malicious. But even though sometimes, like, even sometimes people can do things that are evil and malicious, too, that they don't mean. Like, maybe they're just young and they don't know better. Or if they had some kind of, like, significant mental health issue, then I could see that happening. Or, like, some kind of really bad addiction issue where, like, it's causing them to not see clearly. Because that can definitely happen, too. I've heard that, too, when it comes to, like, that kind of issue, too. When it comes to, like, drugs and alcohol, there's sometimes things that happen where there's significant side effects. So I think it's definitely good to look at the situation, too, and hope that they get the help they need. But I would definitely want to also try to help them as much as possible, as long as it wasn't something very evil. But I do think it's a very good learning situation, and I do think it would be very hard. And I also think, too, I'd potentially bail out a kid depending on what was going on. If it was, like, a very small, like, if it was, like, something like a DUI, like, first offense, and they didn't hurt anyone, I think I would definitely bail them out. However, if it's something more severe and they, like, lack empathy, I think I would, unless if, like, I don't think I would really bail them out. I might just let them get the help they need in prison, too. I think it would be a very hard conversation, but I do think it's good to go into it and still trying to help your kid as much as you can. Even though that's a very tough thing to do, I think that it's still very good to try to help them during a very difficult time. And it would still be difficult on the whole family, too. But yeah, I could literally keep talking about this because I think this is a very interesting situation. And I do think, too, that sometimes people, also another issue, too, in the U.S., I have some empathy for people because I also think people don't know also what they're doing wrong. Like, we don't learn enough about laws or how to file taxes, when to file taxes, that kind of stuff. So I do think sometimes, like, we should be taught in school basic rules to not get arrested, but we're not, surprisingly. So I think sometimes you could end up doing something really dumb and get put into jail and then realize it. Or sometimes you'll have a really bad mental health issue or addiction and not even realize it until you're in jail. So I think we have to be kind of nicer to people. Because also there was a situation, I don't know if you guys heard about this, but in the United States, this was actually several years ago, and I remember this case, it really haunts me. But there was a case where there was a nurse who had a family of cute kids and her husband, and she was dealing with some post-traumatic issues after having one of her kids. And this is a very common thing. I think she had like PPD or PPE, or no, what was it? Postpartum depression or psychosis. I can't remember which one she had. Maybe both. But anyway, what happened was, this was a nurse, so someone who was actually in the medical field, and she was telling people, she was going to the clinic saying, hey, I'm having issues where I'm feeling like I'm going to hurt myself, or my kids, or someone around me, I'm having these thoughts, and they're supposed to legally put you into, like, a hold, and they did not. And then after then, she ended up killing her kids and throwing them out the window. And her husband actually forgave her because she tried to get the help that she needed, and then they kind of just brushed it off on the clinic. So I'd like to see actually how that turns out too, because she's now in jail. And I actually feel bad for her because it wasn't like she is just an evil parent. Like, she loved those kids and she had a psychosis moment. So yeah, after sometimes you give birth, you can have a really hard time with your mental health. And sometimes just depression and also psychosis can happen too. So yeah, isn't that insane how in a second something like that can happen? So I think it's really important to note too that sometimes people can get in situations that you may not even see coming. So I think it's really good to try to support them even through the difficult times, unless if you physically can't. Like, it would have to be a really tough situation, like maybe if it's like a Dahmer case and like they're just really cold and heartless and they don't care about anyone or show any empathy, then I think and if they had like a clean mental health check too, I think it'd be different. Or like they didn't have any addiction issues, then it would be something to definitely not support. But I would just hope the best for my kids, even if there's a very difficult situation that happens. And I also know too that like addicts can go back to jail several times too, which is a very sad situation. But I would just really want the best for my kid regardless. And I know sometimes that we all make mistakes, so I think it's really fair to know that forgiveness is a thing. Regardless of how bad the situation was, I do think that I would try my best to forgive them and try to help them as much as I could, and even try to call them or potentially bail them out if it's a smaller crime. But I think it would depend on the situation what would happen. So that was definitely a tough question. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this video as much as I did. Do you guys think I was a strict parent or not with these questions? Below, let me know. And I hope you guys have a great week. Bye!